So, I guess most people now have at least seen pasta being made from scratch, the pasta dough, and probably have made it yourself. And today what we're going to do is make everything without machines, so no food processors, no blenders at all. So we're going to do it just with a rolling pin, and to start with we're going to make the pasta dough with a fork. I've got 400 grams of flour. I'm going to make a little well. Actually, I'm going to do it as they do it in northern Italy. So you make a well like this on the table, break the eggs into the middle. You will have seen this. You've just got to go onto any old YouTube. The art is to make sure that you keep it in the middle as best you can. So make a big enough crater in the middle. 4 normal size eggs. I've started recently to make pasta dough using wholemeal flour, using spelt flour, rye flour. It's really interesting, as well as fine polenta flour. So it's worth experimenting. And actually, I have to say the texture of a mixture of flours is really interesting. You see what I'm doing? I'm just mixing with just a fork, gradually getting the egg mixed in with the flour. It's a simple process that's been practiced, as we all know really, in Italy for decades, hundreds of years probably. This is a very fine flour. This is a 00 flour. This is what you're going to be getting in your hampers. It's something that is really worth doing with children. You see what's happening now. It's beginning to thicken up in the middle. It's still very lumpy here. It's forming a kind of pastry type crumb, you can see. I'm sort of scraping it together like this. Carry on doing this until you get to the point where all that, you've got a uniform texture and all the egg and flour have been mixed together like that. I think we're ready to form a lump now. But you want to get to this point before you try and compress it into a firm lump.
And Barney, if people do have machines, is it okay to use it?
Absolutely. Good question. So obviously if you've got a food processor, do it in that. It's going to take you 50 seconds rather than about 10 minutes. And the same with, you may well have a pasta machine. We use them a lot in the cookery school. But I'm going to just do it as Charlotte and I were talking this morning about the fact that you can do this. In Italy, for the most part, they don't use machines at all. It's all done with a rolling pin. What you do need, and it's the kind of golden rule of making pasta anyway, is a really clean surface. I didn't show you that, but before we started filming this, I gave this whole worktop a really good clean. So there's nothing on it except the wood. So I'm using the heel of my hand like this, getting the weight of my back behind it, stretching it. You can see what I'm doing. And the thing you've got to do is sort of trust that there's enough egg or enough flour, depending on which way you look at it, to form the right texture. And if you feel it's a bit too sticky, just add a little bit more flour. This is actually perfect. So we're almost there. I'm going to roll it a bit more while you go off and make yourselves a cup of coffee. So I finished kneading the pasta dough, and it's beautifully supple and smooth. And I'm now going to wrap it. In the old days, of course, we used to use cling film, but now we don't, because we know better than that. I'm going to wrap it really tightly in greaseproof paper, doing it in the manner of a cheesemonger wrapping cheese, which somebody showed me how to do. And that's going to go in the fridge. There's the pasta dough, ready for us to roll out. I'm going to cut it into 4 pieces. There's 100 grams of flour to 1 egg per piece. We're just going to use 2 pieces, one for Charlotte and one for me. And away we go. So I'm almost thinking, Charlotte, that we don't need much flour, but the less flour you use at this stage, the better. Just a tiny dusting on the table. Now, we're doing, both of us doing it, because it's quite nice to see 2 people doing it, even though Charlotte's going to copy me, even though she's done it a million times before. So we're just going to try and get a big rectangle like this to start with. Front and back. Loads of pressure. This is not pastry. It's very forgiving, it's very tough. And I'm going to turn it over and do it again. You see what I'm doing? And then I'm going to make it a bit thicker as well this way, a bit wider. You know how you learn something every day when you're cooking. I learned the other day why it's better to roll pasta on wood, and that is because wood has greater humidity, so as you're rolling it out, it's less likely to dry out. And there is a point at which, if you spend too long doing this, it will get too dry to work. So I think we're going to say, that's it. If you need to leave it, it's just very slightly damp and tea towel, not uniformly, but it's just giving you an idea. If you have to leave it for more than about 10 or 15 minutes before you start assembling the pasta parcels. But my advice would be to have everything ready, the filling, the sauce which is over there, and we're going to heat it up in a minute, the water ready boiling, and maybe even the plates in the oven. So you want 2 teaspoons, and you're going to use one to scrape the filling from the other, like that. Little blobs of pasta like that. Don't overdo it. Very clean fingers, everything is very clean, so look at this, it's just, you could use a pastry brush, but the trouble with a pastry brush is it risks using too much water, and then you end up with a slightly sticky pasta mix. So I'm going to do this so that you can see what I'm doing this way. I'm going to fold it over like this. It should have been a straight edge. I get very low marks on MasterChef for this, I can tell you. But you can see what I'm doing now. I'm just pinching those 2 edges together, like that. Now, having done that quite firmly, I'm going to pinch between each little pile of pasta, little parcel. There we are, really firmly in between. I'm going to cut the ends like that, just off there. I'm going to roll right along here, along this edge. closely to the pasta as you dare. We're going to use those for something else, these little scrappy bits. Nothing goes to waste in this kitchen. And then I'm just going to cut this like that. You can see now where we're coming from on this. And what I do, just to be on the safe side, to make sure they're sealed, because you don't want them to open up when you're cooking them, is just go around a little bit like this to check. I mean, it's a labour, this dish. You can't get away from that. And then the best thing to do before you cook them is to have that greaseproof paper, which I forgot. Now I'm going to, that could be that one, yes. And either polenta flour or flour, just to keep it a bit like that until you need to cook them. Until you're going to cook them. So I'm going to do the other one. You're going to do yours now?
Yeah, I can do the ravioli now.
You're going to do the ravioli, which is
so with the ravioli, it's slightly different. So you've got the bottom sheet, and then we're going to lay the top sheet over from one side, and then you're just going to very carefully use your finger just to sort of tuck round the edges and let the air out in between each ravioli. So you kind of want to tuck as you go. So you have two hands, one for shaping and one for holding the pasta. And then just gently tuck out around the filling. You want to get rid of any air bubbles, otherwise they have a tendency to explode in the water. So you can sort of just tap like Barney did, just around the edge of the filling. And then make sure you keep going until the last one. And then it's exactly the same as the agnolotti really, but these are slightly bigger. And if you don't have one of those sort of cutters, you can just use a knife at this stage, just to sort of cut between them. So I'm just gonna go back over them just to double check that I've got a nice seal around the pasta. And then in between each one, I can just do a nice cut.
Yours
mine's
ready to go?
Okay,
I'm going to get mine in.
and it's quite sort of heavily salted water as well. So there's no salt in the pasta dough. So we want to make sure that the water is going to flavour, season the pasta as it cooks.
It's going to take about 4 or 5 minutes.
So my pasta is looking like it's there. It's had about 3 minutes in boiling salted water. I've just got a bowl with a little bit of butter in it. So I'm just going to scoop out all of the ravioli and just tip it into the bowl. And actually the water from the pasta is really important. So try not to throw it away, because that's actually going to be very useful for helping emulsify the sauce a bit later.
I think mine's done. And in the absence of a pasta basket, I'm going to just pour it like this. You do this over the sink, obviously.
So I don't know if you can see that, but you can see just from swirling it around, it's going to create this sort of like buttery sauce in it, which is going to be lovely.
Yeah, delicious.
So we've got some very nice warm plates, and I'm going to serve up, I think, 5 of these little
And I'm going to do a little pile too. I'm going to do a few more than 5.
They look perfect.
They are. I'm going to say they are on the sturdy side. Shall I put some on
Yes,
yours?
please.
So it's got parsley in it, and as I said earlier, we're going to put
A bit of
a
sprinkled
little
chive.
bit of chives on from me too, please. That would be lovely.
Ooh, doesn't that look beautiful?
It does. And then, of course, finally a little bit of parmesan, because we can't have enough parmesan. So I'm going to get some forks.
Parmesan.
Yeah.
Look at
There we
that.
are. Lovely pasta parcels stuffed with pumpkin and with a delicious walnut sauce.
Perfect for Boxing Day?
Perfect
Or the
for
next
Boxing
day,
Day,
I don't
yeah.
know.
I don't know, Boxing
Depends
Day.
how full we are.
Or Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Mm.